So let's talk about Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who famously took a hammer to the very foundations of Western thought. Today, we're going to dive into one of his most explosive ideas, and we'll be using the work of scholar Sarah Kofman to guide us. We're about to uncover the secret, hidden life of metaphors and see how it completely blows up everything we thought we knew about truth itself. You know, for basically all of history, philosophy has drawn a really clear line in the sand. Over on one side, you've got the heavy hitters, right? The world of concepts. We're talking truth, logic, reality. That's the serious, grown-up stuff. And then, way over on the other side, you have metaphors. That's the fluffy stuff, illusion, poetry, art. It's nice, maybe, but it's not where you find real hard knowledge. But then Nietzsche comes along, and in his classic style, he just lobs a grenade into the whole thing. He asks this totally radical question. What if that neat line in the sand, what if that's the biggest illusion of them all? What if that whole solid world of truth and logic is actually built on a shaky foundation of, you guessed it, metaphors that we've just forgotten about? Okay, so let's get into it. Part 1, philosophy's metaphor problem. And this immediately throws up a huge issue, a core paradox that Kofman points out right from the get-go, one that really gets to the heart of the problem with philosophy itself. I mean, just think about this for a second. How are you supposed to use the standard philosophical toolkit, logic, reason, concepts, to analyze a guy who says those very tools are rigged, that they're fundamentally deceptive? It's like trying to describe what water feels like using only fire. It just doesn't work. That's the massive challenge Nietzsche throws down for us. So how do we even begin to tackle this puzzle? Well, Kofman points us toward Nietzsche's very first book, The Birth of Tragedy. And this is where we find our first big clue. And guess what? The clue isn't hidden in some dense logical argument. Nope, it's in music. So Nietzsche sets up this kind of hierarchy, like a ladder moving away from reality. Check this out. At the very bottom, the foundation, is the world's essence. It's this raw, chaotic, primal force of life itself. Now, what's the closest we can get to expressing that? Music. He says music is a direct symbol of that chaotic energy. It doesn't just talk about joy and pain, it kind of embodies it. Okay, take a step up the ladder. Now you have images and myths. These are basically metaphors of the music. And then, way up at the top, the most distant, faded, washed-out version, that's our beloved concept. It's a metaphor of a metaphor. And this is the mind-blowing part, really. That thing we pride ourselves on, the logical concept, the thing we think is the sharpest tool in the shed for getting at the truth, Nietzsche says it's actually the complete opposite. It's the most watered-down, anemic, lifeless echo of reality you can possibly get. It's the furthest thing from the truth, not the closest. So this brings us to the main event, the big reveal. If concepts are these pale imitations, then where the heck do they come from? How are they even made? Let's become philosophical detectives and trace the secret origin of the concept. Okay, so it all begins with something physical, a nerve stimulus. You see something, you feel something. It's a raw, one-of-a-kind experience that happens only to you. Then your mind creates an image from that feeling. Boom, that's metaphor number 1. It's already a translation, not the real thing. Next, we slap a sound onto that image, a word. Let's say leaf. That's metaphor number 2. We've moved even further away. But here comes the final, most deceptive step, creating the concept. We take that word leaf, and we decide it has to stand for every single leaf that has ever existed. And to do that, we have to erase everything that made our original experience special. The specific color, the way the light hit it, the little tear on the edge, all of it gets deleted. And this is where Nietzsche just drops the mic. He says a concept isn't some pristine little box for holding truth. No, it's a graveyard. It's the place where all those millions of unique, vivid, real experiences are buried and forgotten. And why do we do it? So we can have a nice, clean, simple label. It's built on the massive fiction of equating things that are fundamentally not the same. So the next logical question is, why? If our concepts are built on this huge act of generalization, of, lying, why on earth do we rely on them so heavily? In any good detective story, you have to ask, what's the motive? Why this great forgetting? And Nietzsche, of course, has this killer analogy to explain it. He says that what we call truths are like old, worn-out coins. This is one of his most famous ideas, so let's really walk through it. Okay, so imagine a brand new metaphor. It's like a coin straight from the mint. The picture on it is crisp, the details are sharp, it has real artistic power. The first time someone said something like a sea of troubles, it was poetic, it was powerful. You could almost feel the waves. But what happens to that coin after it's been passed around for years? Traded from person to person, bouncing around in pockets? Exactly. The sharp edges get smooth. The image gets worn down until you can barely even see it anymore. Well, that's exactly what happens to a metaphor. We use it over and over and over until we completely forget it was ever a creative, artistic thing. It just becomes a cliché. And eventually, after enough time, the coin is just a smooth, blank disc of metal. Its artistic origin, the picture it once held, is totally erased. And at that point, we stop treating it like a beautiful, symbolic coin. We just treat it as metal, as a fact. We accept it for its value. And that, Nietzsche says, is exactly what a concept is. It's a metaphor that has been worn so smooth by use that we've forgotten it was ever a metaphor to begin with, and we mistake it for literal, objective truth. So there's our motive. It's nothing sinister, no big conspiracy, it's just social necessity. To function as a society, to even talk to each other, we need some common ground. We have to agree on what words mean. And to do that, we have to take the sharp, unique edges of our own personal experiences and sand them down into smooth, generic coins, concepts that we can all trade and understand. Language is basically a peace treaty, and the very first casualty of that treaty is our own individual truth. All right, so what's the verdict here? If our concepts, our logic, and our very idea of truth are all built on this foundation of forgotten art, where does that leave us? What are we supposed to do with this information? Well, Nietzsche says we need to look backward for the answer. Way back, before Plato and Aristotle came along and tried to turn philosophy into a cold, hard science. He points to thinkers like Heraclitus as the model. See, Heraclitus didn't treat philosophy like some dry, logical exercise. For him, it was an art. He was all about metaphor, intuition, embracing the chaos and contradictions of life, instead of trying to pin it all down with rigid, stable truths. Now, the key takeaway here isn't that we should just stop using language. I mean, that's impossible. We need it. The real goal is to wake up, to become aware of where our concepts actually come from. It's about stopping ourselves from treating our ideas like rigid, objective facts and starting to see them for what they are, human, artistic creations. We have to become, as Nietzsche famously put it, the poets of our own lives. We have to take responsibility for creating our own meanings, our own values, with our eyes wide open. And that leaves us with one final challenge, a question that Nietzsche throws directly at you. See, he's not going to give you a new set of truths to replace the old ones. He's not going to tell you the way. He just says, this is my way. So after all this, after seeing that our so-called truths are just worn-out metaphors, the only real question left is the one he asks you. Where is yours? What path are you going to create?